Right to the presentation from Alicia.
I'm gonna come back here.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
talk loud.
Uh-huh. Thank you. And y'all should have.
I sent out, the ones on your tables are updated. I just made some changes this morning after I got another agreement from Garrett.
Okay. And I laid that agreement too. That Garrett sent this morning.
Do you? Those of you that know just are.
There we go.
Okay. And so after I got the agreements from Garrett, I kind of wanted to see how the long-term effects would be for the county for each kind of agreement. So I came up with this presentation to show you kind of what I have found. So for the 3 months that AMR is going to be providing service, he's dubbed that as the continuity period. That's kind of from February until June 30th. And Garrett's given us these average percentages of our share of the EMS calls over the last 5 years. And so for Hutchinson County, it is 25%. So the two different options for this continuity period, the first option, he had, the agreement presents the county and Fritch paying 100% of the AMR costs. The AMR cost is going to be about $68,000 per month. So for about 3 months, it's going to be about $205,000. The first agreement has the county paying $64,935.74 and Fritch paying $3,500. So for the county over 3 months, that would be a total out of pocket of $194,000. Option 2 would be having the city pay for AMR while they're operating and then just roll it into the operating loss with the startup costs. Part of option 1 would be, sorry, I'm getting nervous. Option 1 would be Borger absorbing the startup costs and we would just pay for AMR. So option 2 would be the city paying for both the startup costs and AMR and then just billing out our share of that 25% on before August the 1st, and then we would pay it quarterly during fiscal year 2024. And then I kind of showed the estimates of how much everything would cost from Garrett's presentations. He shows that from, I guess, now until the end of their fiscal year of September the 30th, they're estimating a loss of $208,000. He also provided me some numbers for just this continuity period, and he's estimating that the loss for the continuity period of February through, sorry, that's a typo right there. It should be from June 30th instead of September the 30th. From February the 1st to September the 30th, the operating loss is estimated to be $234,000.
Till June, right?
Yes, just till June.
Okay.
And it's more because we're not going to start collecting revenue until the ambulances are actually put into service.
There's only 1 month of revenue in that because I figured, it's going to take 30 days before anybody start, we'll start billing May 14th, but I doubt anybody's going to pay May 15th.
Right.
Right. True.
And so if we look at the cost comparison for each agreement, the first one would be for the county and Fritch paying 100% of the AMR costs. So our portion was $64,000. So the total over 3 months would be $194,000. If we do option 2 and this is 30% share because the original percentages I had was 30%. And in a quick hurry this morning, I changed the numbers, but I did not change that 30%. So this is actually showing 25%. So our 25% share of AMR would total $51,000. And then our 25% share of that continuity period loss of $234,000 would be $70,445. Giving us a total out of pocket of $121,772. So option 2 saves us about $73,000.
Each of that middle number didn't change, shouldn't 74, 45, 42 change?
Oh, did I not get that one changed?
If it's the same as the third option.
So maybe I didn't get the first change. Sorry, I was doing a whirlwind this morning.
So I don't know how much that, it would just be a little less savings.
I was thinking it was,
No, that 70. I did not get that number changed. That's correct. So that should be. So that should be 58,704.52. And then if you add the 51,326.81, that gives the total out of pocket for option 2 as $110,031.33. Yes. so
that's our
it's-
savings. Yeah.
Yes, and so, no, that would be the total out of pocket. So the difference between.
Oh, the total cost, yes.
110 And the 194,807.22 gives us a savings of $84,000. Even? No, $84,775.89. Thank you. And I apologize. I was in a rush. So if we look at the money and, we can never tell exactly what the operating losses are gonna be, but if Garrett's numbers are close, then this at least gives us an idea. And so, do y'all have any questions about the 3 months of operating before Borger actually takes over? For me or Garrett?
So Garrett, option 2. Is that a possibility for Borger?
Yeah.
Financially?
Yeah, I didn't, excuse me, I didn't give her anything that I think we couldn't get done. So the difference in option 2 is Fritch has already approved their portion, so I'm not going to change theirs. Their money was based on what they're already paying
Right.
AMR.
Right.
So that's what they're already budgeting. So, for us, it's half a dozen and one, option 1. For a little bit of it's the same debate that we had with AMR. Option 1's kind of like the AMR contract. It's fixed and we know what it's going to be. Option number 2 is
A little variable.
there's some variable, however, doing some more, I do feel like Stanette's been on the high side at about 40% reimbursement rates, which is, I think a decent comparison since we're in the same county. So there again, if we're on the high side at 40%, in all of our financial estimates, we're going to be doing pretty good.
Yeah.
It's just, what I don't know is how long insurances are going to take to pay. I factored in a month of revenue, and
Right.
I'm not even going to try to speculate what the insurance companies are going to do, but we have a preference either way. I mean,
Okay. Y'all got any questions on that continuity part?
like I said, we do still think that May 14th is a good date. It's the DEA license that might delay things just a little bit, which is what we need for others.
Mhm.
But we've got, we did hire Jeff from Stinnett as our EMS coordinator. He started last Thursday.
Good.
And so we've already started that paperwork. So I think we got things going.
Okay. Good.
So in this graph is which one, me and Gary on the end?
We've got the big heads coming out.
Our feet are big.
But yeah,
On them, so I could tell who was who.
Well, supposedly, if it makes you feel better, when I was born, my head was quite large. Dr. Colgado at the time, who's my godfather, he just consoled my family by going, big head means lots of brains.
There you go. I look skinnier in that photo.
True likeness.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
thanks a lot.
It's a blank expressions on our face.
And like I said, when you look at the continuity agreement, the option one, I did go ahead and it's a little slim line from the operating loss. The way we worded in the agreement, because I just went ahead and locked in the percentages that we knew. Because, we're only talking about 5 months here. And so we didn't need some of that, the other annual, that's, ongoing of how we're going to calculate it annually. It's a little separate. And then I guess, did everybody kind of understand the response map? Or y'all got that? It's got a lot of colors on it, but pretty much everything south of the Canadian River, that line here is what we're taking. But going forward, so y'all don't pay what's in Carson County or Moore County, we're going to have all these little areas kind of portioned out, so we have a little better record, so we don't have to kind of hand go through it like we did to get those numbers.
So when they respond into Carson or Moore, do they get a subsidy from them or
Not yet.
no? You're working on that.
Well, we'll see what the numbers are. If the numbers are small and collections are high, because like a lot of times when you respond to those counties, they're car wrecks, so you're going to generate revenue from that because you are legally required to have car insurance at least.
Right.
So, we'll have to see how that goes. As we kind of get the numbers narrowed down, and, I think Borger has the higher call percentages because we have the nursing homes
Right.
and the hospital. And of course, I took out the non-emergency transports, or the interfacility transports aren't in those numbers, so that we're looking at just the actual emergency response numbers.
Okay.
So this is just for the,
This is just for the 3 months. I
Continuity.
can go ahead and go into the 2 interlocals that are for long term. And then we can go into executive session and y'all can discuss it with Craig or.
Mhm. Okay.
And then there's 2 different agreements that were presented from Garrett for the actual interlocal agreements. So it'll be for them in the ambulance service. So one of the options is a 7-year term where we contribute up to $1 million for the purchase of the ambulances and the equipment that goes into the ambulances. And then the second option is just a 5-year term with no capital contribution. They would purchase all of the equipment and then we would just pay our share. So the 2 kind of have the same basic terms. They're both they determine the operating loss based on the previous year using July the 1st through June the 30th. And they're both going to calculate the losses on the preceding 5-year average of calls for service. The terms will automatically renew after the initial term for 1-year periods. And then any payment due is going to be paid out quarterly. The difference is on the 7-year, we would reimburse the city for any purchase of the equipment up to $1 million. The county's portion of any operating loss will be credited towards the amount of capital, so that that $1 million, say that's what we pay out, is $1 million. So it kind of goes on a credit to our account, basically. And then the city will pay the county either by cash or a reduction in the county's share of the lost $85,000. And that's just for Borger's portion of the ambulances, the cost of the ambulances. And then the reimbursement or the credit from the city is only during the first initial term of 7 years. And so if we look at the 7-year term first, the thing that was kind of confusing for me was that 85,000 reimbursement. And so I emailed Garrett to get kind of a clarification to make sure that I understood it correctly. And so if our portion of the loss is about $100,000, then they will credit us 85,000 and we would only pay $15,000. And then if our annual loss is $75,000, our portion of the loss is 75,000, then we wouldn't pay anything. They would credit us the 85,000, which would leave a overpayment of $10,000. So they would refund that back to us in cash. And then if, we happen to be in the black and making money, or our portion of the loss is zero because we break even, again, we would pay nothing, and then the county or the city would pay us $85,000. And Garrett, let me, the only thing, the first example, we paid out 15,000, so that 15,000 would be credited to the $1 million that we paid out
On top of the 85,000.
on top. So the eight,
So you get a full $100,000 credit against the million.
okay. So then I misunderstood that completely because I thought if
Right, you're not paying, but it would work down the million because that. So the intent was, so since the city's getting, if we go this way, the city's getting assets, right? So the city should have some sort of contribution to the assets that are going to hit our book. So using that same percentage, if we buy $1 million worth of assets, $65,000 or $650,000, whatever that math is, it would be the city's portion. So you divide that by 7 and you get $85,000 a year. And so my thinking was that we'll give you credit for that, but the entire amount of the operating loss will get credited against the $1 million.
okay. So my examples go from what we were actually out of pocket going against our.
So it ends up, I guess, being a little better than
Yes.
what you factor. But so like if we had an annual loss of 100,000, if the county share of the annual loss was $100,000, $100,000 would come off of your $1 million credit in the bank, but you don't have to pay $10,000 because we're giving the city's the city's portion of that would be the $85,000 against the capital equipment. So kind of that $85,000 is the city's paying. In theory, we're financing the equipment from y'all at 0% for 7 years. And we're guaranteeing that you will get credit for the city's 65% of that. But we're not guaranteeing the county's portion depending on what the loss is. So if we operate in or near the black, the county will have a contribution of $270,000 at the end of 7 years, but that was paid up front with the capital purchase. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Can we pause for just a minute while I run to my office?
Yeah, sure.
Right back. Just so that I have updated numbers.
What I've learned is that math and grammar don't always go together very well.
And I know I've gone to all those trainings on ARP. If we're getting money back after using ARP funds, is that legal?
I think that's a separate thing. I mean, we're paying it for capital assets.
But then we're
So then-
making money on it at some level.
We're not really making money.
You're making money on the ambulance service.
Yeah.
So.
I'm
depending
just
on-
saying, since it's free
Right.
money to us, will the government say, oh yeah, y'all can make money on I don't know. These are just
Well,
questions.
anytime, like if we bought any asset here, like we bought those radios. And there was like we use any services that involve those radios, that would technically be, that brought in revenue, that'd be using those radios to make money. Or like if we went in the trash collection service and bought a garbage truck, we'd bring in revenue for that. I mean, I think that people are doing that type of stuff where they're getting assets to bring in revenue to their county.
I don't think revenue is an issue. It's the fact that if you got that money back in, like you're saying, if I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
You approve this to spend from ARP and then you get reimbursed. Where does the money go? What do you do with that money?
To me, the money comes back as unrestricted funds.
Right,
It's all lost revenue.
Yeah.
right?
right.
Yeah.
So there's.
But
also-
the only restriction is that we have to have that obligated by, what, the end of 24 and spent by, where money that came back to us would not.
Well, if
There would be no
you're reporting to the treasury like we
That's what I-
has lost revenue, you don't have to provide any of these receipts because they don't care what you're spending the money on.
Right,
And so at that point, it's free and clear. But if there was any, that to me, that's the benefit to the county on this, is if there is any ambiguity in that, you're getting $85,000 back or some
With-
portion thereof in
No
your
strings
general
attached,
operating fund
basically.
yearly.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of my thinking with that is it defers the operating impact to the county's budget for 7 years.
And I'm sure they talked about in all those ARP things. I just never thought about it till we're sitting here right now.
The radio is a bad example, but our constable cars, they're just for papers that bring in money when they pay the fees and all that stuff too. So I mean, we're already doing that now. We're getting revenue
I
in.
mean, to me, practically, the way it is now, once you spend ARP money, it's no longer ARP money.
Okay,
It's just general funds.
that's cool.
So whatever happens after that is not really ARP.
Okay,
Yeah, they changed it to where they're just like, just get rid of it.
Because the agreement is for interlocal services,
Yes.
which is what we're doing. So, you're spending money to buy the capital, but then we're making a separate agreement for how the financial aspects of providing those services. But
well, I'd love to say it dawned on me before, but it didn't until just now. So
Right.
well, and the federal government, the Treasury Department's only changed their mind like what, 7 times throughout the whole
Right.
NP process.
the final rules, the final rule.
Yeah, now we're going through the auditor with, we believe that it's lost revenue, so, but we have to have a single audit because we had a railroad grant and all that stuff too, so, what's the proof of proper expenditure if they, gave you a standard deduction is what I've been liking it to,
There's so many ways to interpret what they say.
yeah. They're gonna be short-staffed dealing with all of that stuff anyway, which is why they gave the standard allocation. And just, if it's up to $10 million, it's just assumed lost revenue.
They're like, this is too much work.
Yeah, they got tired of trying to.
after they did it, they're like,
Yeah.
boy, this is bigger than we thought.
I'll let it go.
Tomorrow night, I might say he wants it all back. We're gonna fight inflation. We're gonna get those ARP funds.
Or maybe they'll give us more.
Don't say that.
No, I don't want no. That's bad.
Paying for it.
Oh, yes, we are.
Some of that's that old adage, nothing is ever free.
My New Year's resolution became, I'm not eating eggs. Because it costs $500,000 for a dozen.
Is that an easy one to keep? Wouldn't be for me.
I like eggs, but I mean,
I like eggs.
I eat eggs regularly.
I did.
I think it's.
They're still one of the cheaper proteins.
I found one of my patients has the independent egg people.
Oh, yeah.
Farmers are rising up now,
So you're,
capitalizing.
so in the doctor field, you get paid by eggs.
Chicken.
Dude, I'm
Here's a
not above-
chicken.
I'm not above the barter system. It's good stuff.
Right?
Okay, so I've fixed that to reflect the way that I totally missed that.
On your way out, what I said is, a lot of times math and grammar don't go together.
No, it doesn't.
So just to make sure, this applies year one, correct?
No, or the whole.
This is 7 years each.
Yeah, I know, I mean,
Starting January, starting July.
because I think we can clear up the contract a little bit, because if you, sometimes when you read it, it looks like we're gonna recoup the whole million, and then it starts, which I don't think was the intent.
Right. Yeah.
I would do that too.
Yeah, I know we're kind of dealing, with some short timeframes here that have probably pushed this a little quicker than
Right.
Right.
what any of us normally would have dealt with.
Sure. Okay, next. And this just shows the estimated cost of the equipment that Garrett came up with so that it might be completely $1 million that we would be paying out in our ARP funds, but maybe closer to 800,000.
Well, that's for two new, we still have a used truck,
Oh,
because we'll need the 3 spares, but we did also, like, some of that, like the council tomorrow is gonna approve the cardiac monitors, which we found, refurbished loaners. So they were the company's loaner models, and we're gonna be able to get 2 for about the price of 1. So that's saving about $40,000 right there. So I mean, we are working through some stuff.
Is that the exact, I can't remember the amount that y'all approved for those 2 new ones. Is that, what did y'all do for the 2 units, the trucks?
Is it the
Last week.
400?
It's $400,900 is what's in the budget.
But what did y'all, because y'all had them held and y'all approved at the last.
Right,
meeting.
the truck itself is $282,000. And then there's the cot, it was like 30 grand per cot.
Right.
The auto loader is $24,000 per truck.
It's so expensive.
So what did y'all approve there though? When y'all made the motion to buy those 2 from that group, what was the cost on that?
282, because that was
Both of
just, that was just the 2 trucks.
Right, right.
And then the cots and the cardiac monitors will be on tomorrow's agenda.
Okay.
The cots are as quoted, but the cardiac monitor is gonna be like 7. But they're quoting maintenance with that. Maintenance gets folded into the operating budget and not the capital expense. But I think it's $45,000 for the 2 refurbished cardiac monitors. This has got 40,900 and something per unit for a new one. So we're a little off of that. Phillips has a cot that they got when they bought the ambulance from the hospital district back when they got out of it, that I think they're going to give us, so that'll reduce some of the capital costs for the spare truck.
Mhm.
And so Pantex has they're getting ready to get rid of one of their ambulances. And so depending on how their process works, there may or may not be. Point is, we're working every angle to, reduce as much of that cost as we can, but, still all those questions.
Right.
So everything so far is at least at or under the budget. that
Yes.
is estimated. Okay.
and that's also comes from Border's presentation. He's estimated the annual expenditure to be about $1.2 million every year. Varies, but on the 7-year chart or agreement, we would need to take off that $150,000 capital payments because we will be, paying the costs up front. So they won't be having to pay back their. So if we look at his different revenue models that he's done and we take out that 150,000, I left 40,000 in just for various equipment that may come up that they may need to purchase just to be conservative. So I only took 110 of that 150 out, leaving an adjusted operating loss of 360,000 at the 25% collection rate, a $3,500 loss at the AMR average collection rate, and then a profit of nearly $80,000 at the 40% collection rate.
And the AMR collection rate is 30 something.
Well, what they do is what they provide is they provided their average collection per transport, which is 520 per transport. So they They didn't give me I don't know how much they bill, which is what they didn't really want to give me, but I know how much they're receiving. So they take how much they bill, so less how much they've received and divided by the number of calls. So they get a per call revenue or a per transport revenue. If they're billing the standard, they're at about a 38% collection rate.
Okay.
And you said you didn't add the transports, to Amarillo and stuff. Where are we at on the hospital district getting involved on that? Or where's that at?
So I'm working on that draft interlocal agreement. I've been putting that one off because it's not as time sensitive as, what we're going to do with that. And so they're going to, we're going to get use of the ambulance barn, and they'll pick up all the utilities and all the maintenance on the ambulance barns. They're going to cover our costs for the medical director and the medical control, and they're going to cover our cost for the patient reporting software and QA software. So they will end up being the only taxing entity that has to pay something even if we make a profit. And so what I've told them is in return of that, we will take transports less than 100 miles as long as there's an ambulance available. So the way that we're working towards is, if we only have one truck, we're not going to take 2 transports at the same time to leave the county within the city without an emergency response truck. And so we're getting some guidelines on when that happens. And then we're going to talk a little bit different about if it's over 100 miles, they're going to have to schedule it, and we're going to have probably payment approved and some things like that. Now, keep in mind that AMR will still, if it's a patient with insurance or something like that, they'll still send a truck from Amarillo to pick up that transport. Like Gray County's come over and done some of those transports, and every now and then we'll do some of those transports depending. So my goal with that is we'll help them, but not at the expense of the rest of the county, city and county residents.
Okay.
But that's my next process.
If we look at the top left, then that shows kind of what our contribution credit will be. And so I've updated those numbers now that, because I had just what we were paying out of pocket going against the contribution instead of the entire loss. So at a 25% collection rate, that would be a remaining credit of $368,740. At the AMR collection, that would leave us a credit balance of $993,875. And at a 40% collection rate, we would still have $1 million. Because we were operating in the black. The reimbursements on the right side from Borger for the 7-year term at 25% collection, they would pay us back. They wouldn't pay us back anything because we would be over the $85,000 credit or loss period. The AMR average, they would end up paying us $588,875. So that changes just a little bit. And then the 40% collection rate would stay at $595. And so if we take the difference between those, it kind of shows us our investment in the capital equipment. So at the 25% collection rate, we would be investing about, that changes to $368,740. The AMR average is also going to be $405,000. And then at 40, it's also $405,000. First, I was doing everything on a 30% share. So our 30% share of $1 million would be $300,000. But if we do a 25% share, then it's $250,000. Look at the next slide. And this will show our total out-of-pocket expenditures over the 7 years for option number 1. Under the 25% collection rate, we would pay out $1 million. We wouldn't get anything reimbursed back to us, so our total out of pocket would be $1 million. At the AMR average, they're gonna reimburse us 588, so that changes to 588,875. So our total out of pocket would be 411,125. And then our 40% collection, it stays the same, and our out of pocket would be at 405. That's it. So if we look at the option 2, which is the 5-year term, so we don't pay any of the capital expenditures up front. If we look at the losses, this is based on the numbers provided by Garrett, what he's estimated for revenue and for expenditure. So the operating loss would be 470,000, 113,000, and then $30,000. If we look at the next slide, if we did, and I'm going to go ahead and give you the 25% shares. All of those numbers, I believe, are the 30% shares. But if the 25% that he gave us last week ranged true throughout the periods, then our loss would be, our share of the loss would be $117,680 under the 25% collection rate. Under the AMR, it would be 28,375. Would be our 25% share, and under the 40% collection rate, our share of the loss would be $7,538. So if we take those and multiply it by the 5 years, that total out of pocket for that term is going to be $823,760 for the 25% collection. And then it's going to be $198,625 for the AMR collection rate. And it's going to be $52,766. I think that's right. Switch. It'll be 37,000, sorry, 37,690 for that 40% collection out of the pocket.
What's wrong with those first two numbers? Nothing was on sheet. Went from 706 to 820.
Oh, that's why. Okay, so what I did the first go around is I did the 5-year. And then I thought, well, we're kind of looking at a 7-year compared to a 5-year. So what I did on my spreadsheet, I didn't do it on the slides, on a spreadsheet, I went ahead and brought that 5-year out 2 more years so that we were comparing a 7-year period to a 7-year period. If you did it just for a 5-year term, it's 588,400 for the 25% collection. Or will be a little bit less, but to compare apples to apples, I went ahead and did the 7-year. And like I said, I was kind of doing this in a whirlwind, so I apologize. So if we look at the next slide and we do a side-by-side comparison. Now that these numbers are changed, let me fix them. If we just look at that bottom one for the 25% share, we'll just work on that one. Those numbers should be correct, looking at a complete 7-year period for both options. So for paying out 7 years, our total out of pocket at a 25% collection rate is gonna be $1 million. Paying out 7 years on option 2 would be 823, so the difference would be $176,000. And then that AMR average, the savings would be $212,000, and then the 40% collection rate would be $352,000. If we're looking at both 7-year periods.
We have to remember though, that there might be that contract after 5 years might change that drastically,
Right,
depending on what happens.
right. Well, it's supposed to automatically renew for 1-year periods.
Year to year.
Well, yeah.
I think the distribution will be, you know, what we've seen and dispatch and all that stuff, is generally pretty agreeable to basing it on, you know, distribution of calls. You know, the thing that's gonna change going forward that I don't know is, you know, inflationary cost increases of salaries and benefits and things like that versus how fast Medicare and Medicaid responds with their reimbursement rate increases. And, you know,
And this particular, I mean, it does show, I mean, the exact same loss every single year, which is not gonna happen. So if you go to the next slide. I just kind of did some other levels. If there was a $500,000 loss, and again, this is at the 30% share. And I kind of did like a various loss. Option 2 always seems to be a little bit better for the county. Anyway, I mean, any scenario I ran. So. And the on here probably have changed a little bit, but. I don't think that they've changed drastically enough to really. Option 2 is always gonna be less out of pocket for the county.
they're not materially different, is the fancy word.
And so just some things that I would like for us to consider about using our ARP funds. Right now, they're sitting in tax pool earning about 4.3% interest. So that's nearly $10,000 a month that we're depositing in interest income. Also, if we keep our ARP funds, that allows later on for investment in more the county facility upgrades that have been talked about, you know, different technologies that may come up. Security needs. We also still have until December of 24 to obligate those funds. We have, and once they're obligated, we have until December of 26 to actually spend them. And then just another kind of thought on the ARP funds is that we could use them to pay off everyday expenses. And then in the fiscal year with a big surplus that would get rolled into our fund balance that we could have for forever. That would be available. It doesn't have a time limit.
An expiration date.
That's kind of all that I had. I apologize that my numbers weren't like I expected versus what he expected, so I should have gotten more clarification on that first.
Like I said, we've moved a lot of numbers and done a lot of things in a very short amount of time, so I mean, we're close, I mean, on any of those, you know, $10,000 here or there when the small percentage I'm talking about. And just so you know, the one you submit, if you've elected to take it as lost revenue for the $10 million surplus, the minute you file your annual report, it's considered obligated. So likely your ARP funds, if you've already made that election, are obligated and your time limits have ceased.
So 26.
No, if you file that, if you elected to take the standard deduction and you have submitted that to the Treasury, and you've reported that you've taken all 4 million, whatever it was, against lost revenue, you're done.
But you still have until December 26 to spend the money.
No, because it's technically in your fund balance. You have spent it
Oh,
because since it was lost revenue, the minute you,
It was already spent as
Right.
lost revenue.
right.
I get you. Maybe that's not the way we had interpreted that.
That's how TML and all the municipalities are looking at it.
Or interpreting.
But for the most part, the city doesn't necessarily have a preference.
So the city doesn't have a preference as to whether we do the capital contribution or whether we don't do the capital contribution.
Well, ideally, so we had planned on spending the money that if we spend the capital contribution, what's getting postponed or delayed
Right,
is
is
a mobile
the-
portable stage
Right.
and a mobile command boost. So we had some excess reserves that we're gonna
And,
buy.
and what was the approximate cost on that?
$650,000 for the mobile command van. I hate to call it a command van because but I mean, we're talking about a truck mount.
Yes.
With like external bathroom, so we could pull it up and people could, go to the bathroom, cameras, all that, about 650,000 for that. The portable stage, we're looking at a trailer stage, which could roll up and it unfolds.
Oh,
It's
for
got the
the
built-in,
dome and
or for
events,
anything.
for any events.
if you wanted the stage, for your MC, for your Easter egg hunt, and we pull it up, it unfolds, it's got the speakers built into it, the stage, you get up there. It's got, built-in generator so it can go anywhere, pull it in the park, it'll have a movie screen that comes down. So we've got that big inflatable movie screen, but.
Right.
It works kind of nice, but this is West Texas.
Right. When the wind doesn't blow.
So those are the things we were looking at with the surplus there. And these are, what we're using is our general budget surplus from last year, which mainly was high because we had a lot of openings. So, when you don't have full positions, you save some money. Our ARP funds have been designated for housing. So, if you don't know, we've got the Yucca Parks getting developed for 25 lots, and we're probably about to buy some other property for housing development, so.
You'll have questions for Garrett?
Like I said, I didn't give you an option that we wouldn't like, there might be one preferred over the other, but.
Sure.
But we'd be, either way is not gonna hurt anybody's feelings, and. I knew that, I've dealt with elected officials long enough to know that they like options, they don't like being put in the corner. Yep. And then if somebody likes it or doesn't like it, I can put it back to y'all and say, well, everyone's decided.
So when we go into executive session, we'll be discussing with Craig kind of what our options are.
Yeah,
the legality.
the legal stuff, yeah. Okay. Y'all ready to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Guess we'll break into executive session.
fine.
Garrett, thank you. Are you going to stick around?
If you need
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Okay, so Garrett, I think we're gonna put on our agenda for Monday both the approval of the continuity agreement and the interlocal agreement for emergency medical services. So,
The short one.
yes, we are leaning towards option 2 in both. But we'll have to make those decisions in open court on Monday. And I think Craig's gonna get with you and hammer out some of the legal stuff. Yeah, so. All right. So item 5 on this is to consider and or approve any action from executive session, but with no action. We'll take some action on Monday, the 13th. For approval of those agreements. Anybody have anything else? Gary,
Just the motion to adjourn.
motion and second,
Nodded like.
all in favor? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, Garrett, for coming. We appreciate you. And thank you for all your work on this. This has been like fast and furious since we got the call in December.
Well, I've been joking that